Hello, everybody. Lang Whitman here again for the Winter Circle Fans of Oaklawn Facebook page. And I'm at the Railbird 333 across all social media. I have a very special guest here tonight for interview number two in my what is hopefully an ongoing series of the Faces at Oaklawn Park. Today, the extremely popular track announcer Matt Dinerman joins me. Matt, thank you for taking time out to join me to do this on what's going to be opening weekend. Didn't know if you had time to do it before opening weekend. I knew that we could get it in at some point, but really thanks for doing this now. How are you? How are you looking forward to the opening weekend?
Thanks for having me on, Lang. Yeah, everything's really excited, or I'm excited. Everybody's really excited for opening week here at Oaklawn. And of course, we've got some new things in store for us. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that in a little while. But everybody's really excited. I'm very excited, and I think just like the last few years, I think it's going to be a very good meet.
Yeah, it's been a little colder than what it normally is at the start of the meet, so that's a little different thing going into this meet. But before we get into this meet, I want to go back to your where you came from, a little bit about your background for people that might not know. I know that you grew up in Southern California, San Diego. Is that correct?
I
And
grew,
I
yeah, I
know
grew up in
that you're big in we're big into baseball or love baseball. Grew up playing baseball. How how long did you play? What level did you get to? What positions did you play? I mean, I know you're a tall guy, so it was either I'm thinking in my head, uh, third base, pitcher, first base. I don't know. We'll see if I'm right.
So I'm a lefty, so that
Okay,
narrows things down. So definitely not third
not
base.
third.
Maybe when I was 6 or 7, when I was a little
Right.
kid, maybe.
You can
But
get away with
I
stuff like that then.
exactly. But I played till about 21. I played in a college, and
Okay.
I was a left-handed pitcher during my later years. But when I played dual positions, I was a pitcher. Obviously, I didn't pitch till late. I think I was in middle school when I started pitching. There was a time when I was younger where I started pitching and I wasn't quite ready. So I was a little bit of a late bloomer there. And then I tried it again in middle school and I was a lot better. But outfield, I was a center fielder.
Okay.
I could play any outfield position pretty quick. I was very good defensively. I was a lot better defensively than I was offensively, admittingly.
Me
So
too. I didn't make it to college, but yeah, I was always the fastest guy on the team. So I either played center or left. Uh, yeah, but I was a righty. So I mean, I could growing up, I never played outfield. My team was so good when I was 14. Uh, we went undefeated that year, and the coach was like, "We need somebody to play outfield." I'd always played first base usually, and I was like, "I'll do it." Because I went out there to center field just to roam around and I could run. So yeah, I love that. I know there's a little baseball connection here between you and me. My dad I grew up in Stuttgart, Arkansas, a town of 9 to 10,000 people, and he was a youth baseball coach for 25 consecutive summers.
oh
Uh,
wow.
from 1979 to 2004, I believe. And those last probably 10 years, I was the assistant. So it got to where he wasn't really running the practices anymore. I was throwing the bat in practice and working with the players physically. And he's still making out the lineup, still coaching third base. But he went to all the meetings too. I didn't have to go to the coaches' meetings. I didn't care anything about that. I cared more about being with the kids and getting them ready for the games. Okay, so we got that set. Were you in Southern California? You're playing baseball. Where did the interest in the horse races come from?
So my dad was a fan of horse racing, and when I was probably about 10 or 11, he took me to the track for the first time and was pretty stricken by the whole thing right away in a very positive way. I just very much connected to it. The racing, the pageantry, the horses coming down the stretch and how fast they move, the jockeys, the crowd, the excitement, all everything really. And I was just mesmerized by the whole thing. And after my first trip, I really wanted to go back. So my dad kept taking me back, and I really fell in love with the game very quickly. And that's how I sort of fell in love with racing. My parents did not make a living through horse racing, nor did my grandparents. Or I'm a first generation horse racing person.
So that was at Del Mar.
Yeah, Del Mar Racetrack was where my home track is technically. Now it's Oaklawn, being here at home
Right.
and having a place of my own here. But yeah, Del Mar was where I first was exposed to racing, which in that respect I'm very lucky and very spoiled because
Right.
when you get to
Right.
go to Del Mar, and the first track that I went to that wasn't Del Mar was Santa Anita.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Where did the love for the racing, or what that you were drawn to racing? When did that transition into the announcing, and and did you know that you could do that, or did you want? I guess you wanted to learn how to do that. How did all that shake out?
Well, I vaguely remember this, and my dad reminds me that I would always ask him questions about the announcer, even when I was little, 10 or 11 years old. How does the announcer know the names and how many lengths are between the horses and that sort of thing? But at that time, I was never thinking about actually doing that. But I feel like my dad telling me that, and again, I vaguely remember asking those questions. I feel like maybe that was a seed that was planted and just needed to pour some water on the seed for it to grow, so to speak. But I didn't really think about actually doing it probably until high school. But even at that point, I didn't really know how to go about it. It just was in my head that that was something I wanted to do. And I actually participated my senior year of high school in a talent show, and I didn't know what talents I had. And my dad, we were sitting at dinner one day and one night, and he said, "Why don't you call a horse race for the class?" And I was a hot walker at that time. I worked for John Sadler as a hot walker
Oh, okay.
for
Okay.
summers. And I called a horse that I used to walk, Black Mamba, who was a very nice turf horse. And there were only four horses in the race. It was a race at Hollywood Park. And I was really nervous to do it in front of the class, but I did and did pretty well. And everybody thought it was really cool. And I said, wow, wouldn't that be something if I could do that to the world in real life? And so that was sort of another level of, oh, I'm really interested in doing this. And eventually, when I worked in the press box at Del Mar after my days as a hot walker, I worked there for 2 summers. And my bosses, Mac McBride and Dan Smith, both who are very influential figures in the business and both who have been very supportive of me, they actually let me take my phone on my tape recorder on the phone and my binoculars that my uncle and aunt gave to me for Christmas and the holiday season and Hanukkah because that's what I wanted to learn how to call races, and I asked them for that as a present for that holiday season. I ended up actually going in one of these empty booths. They have a number of booths in there. They're like little empty rooms that look at the track, and I was able to practice calling races on a tape
Okay.
recorder. And Doc Emmerich, who actually is a very famous hockey
Hockey.
announcer,
Yeah.
he and I use this reference all the time. What I learned about him was when he was trying to be a hockey announcer, and actually hockey and horse racing are very similar because it's very fast paced, a lot of memorization. He actually went to an empty room in the ice arena and he would practice calling the hockey game. So I very much did the same thing with horse racing while working in the press box. And the wheels were set in motion for me to practice and start trying to get good at this.
So take us through your process currently, or even when you started between races. And I know this is something that somebody on I believe Todd Weatherford on the board asked, and it's something that I think is a good question because I like to know too. I know that I say I know. I assume that you're looking at the silks on the jockey, but how do you associate these silks with this horse's name? Is that just flat out memorization in the 25 minutes between races? Do you look do you get a like a practice run or whatever the night before so you kind of got an idea when you get to each race, or how do you go through that process?
Well, before I explain that, I will say that a lot of people do it a little bit differently. And this is one of the
Sure.
reasons it's hard to learn how to be an announcer because you have to teach yourself. I mean,
Right.
you
Right.
can get advice and good advice, but at the end of the day, you still have to use trial and error to determine what's your process, what works for you, what doesn't. So if you ask different people, they're probably going to give you some different answers.
Yeah, you got to do what's comfortable for you.
Exactly. And there was a lot of trial and error involved in that, trying to figure out what worked for me. For me, I'm a very visual learner. So, for example, a lot of announcers color their silks of the horses I was never good at that. Maybe I should rephrase it. I wasn't that I wasn't good at it, although I am a very bad artist in that respect, drawing. It just never resonated with me. I would draw the colors and it wouldn't help me memorize, so I threw that idea out the window. Trevor Denman, he was somebody who just would visually look at the horses and memorize, and that's what I do. As soon as they get on the track, I still start going horse by horse, associating, if I'm memorizing Matt, I'm going to look at the green silks, and then down the back stretches, I see this green, I'm going to say Matt. And if I'm memorizing Lang, I'm going to look at your colored shirt, sort of a darker white shade. And when I see that, I'm going to say that's Lang. Now, I handicap in advance, no matter if I'm giving picks like for Oaklawn today on our
Right.
pre-race show, or actually Nancy Holthus and I were going to be giving out our picks in the Sentinel record. So we have to handicap. But even if I wasn't doing that, I would handicap anyway for numerous reasons, not only because I like to make my own picks for fun, but it's like any other announcer and any other sport. You want to do your homework, you want to know the competitors, you want to know their tendencies. And by handicapping, it does remind you of some things, especially little things. You may know general things about a bunch of horses, but especially here at Oaklawn, there's a lot of shippers, there's a lot of claiming activity. So they typically change barns. There are certain patterns that you see that I'd like to know. Oh, this horse is, first time blinkers improved. I can say that in a call. I like to find things in my handicap and that I could use in a race call that are informative to the viewer and the listener. So with that in mind, I think handicapping actually helps the memorization. Not that I'm trying to memorize like I would on the racetrack when they get on there, but it's at least putting it into your head. And I sort of give the comparison to like taking a test in school. Usually, if you are memorizing the curriculum a half hour to an hour before the test, you might remember it in the short term. You're not really going to remember it in the long term. And even though you need good short term memory as a race caller in horse racing, because you may see the same silks in multiple races and you have to forget about that last horse and remember
Right.
this horse in this race, I do think it's actually very beneficial to handicap these races, look at the contenders, and then sleep on it for a night or two or three if you handicap well in advance, like I probably will this meet. And then next thing you know, when you're on the race, it is set in your brain versus when you look at something an hour before for a test, and then you might remember it for a little bit, but it goes away. By handicapping in advance, some of those horses, the names are already in your brain. You've
Mhm.
already looked at them. Then you just got to find the colors associated with the horse, put it all together, and that's how I memorize.
It might be. I'm going to take what you said there, and that probably helps you with the handicapping part. In these are likely the front runners in the race. These might be the closers in the race. If they break, and from the handicapping part to the memorization part, what to look for, especially in the early part of the race when coming out of the gate. Is that the hardest part? Is when the race starts, see who gets the good break or who loses something at the break?
I, I don't think so because I think
Okay.
I want to make it sound it probably when I say this will sound a lot more simple than it is.
All right.
It's almost like thinking aloud. You're watching the race, you know that an infinite amount of things can happen at any given point during the race. So the key is not having a preconceived notion. For example, Skelly. Let's give him an example. We know that because we watched him enough, so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
folks who know Skelly know he has a difficult time breaking from the gate at times and he has a lot of speed.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that in mind, if he's broken bad the last couple of races, I'm not sitting there looking in the binoculars waiting for him to break bad or waiting for him to show speed. I'm simply waiting to see what happens, process it, and describe what's happening. And then, for example, if you know those past performances, you can say, for example, he breaks well. I can say Skelly broke a lot better today than in his last couple of races. And I think that gives a little bit more color and also information about the
Right.
horses telling the whole story. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, I think calling a race very much, you have to trust your own ability to be able to say, I know what I'm watching, I have command of what I'm watching, and I trust what I'm seeing and how I'm describing it is accurate and is telling the right story.
Yeah, and I guess that's really what it is you're talking out loud, telling a story for the next minute 10, minute 37, whatever distance they're running. And yeah, you don't know what you're fixing to see. And you just got to adjust on the fly as best you can every race. Let me ask you this: on the races where you also do it seems like one of the two races in an hour you do the paddock. It's like looks like you and Nancy switch off on that. Is doing the paddock thing, does that cut? I mean, obviously it cuts in a little to your prep time, but obviously I guess you've learned how to work around that.
Absolutely. And in between races, I try not to do too much memorizing per se, looking at things. I sort of wait until they come on the track to do that. And I actually think that when you talk about main contenders in the paddock, it actually helps a little bit. When I was at Golden Gate, I actually would talk between the post parade and when they went into the starting gate.
Oh wow.
We were coupled with Santa Anita, and whenever I would go on air, because I was the paddock analyst as well, I did double duty at Golden Gate. I was sort of a one-man show over there. And I just figured, everybody's going to be watching Santa Anita because we were typically 15 minutes apart, and that's when we were in the paddock when Santa Anita would run. And even though I was pretty good at memorizing, we didn't have as many horses to memorize there, and there weren't as many shippers. Everybody was there. I followed the work tab. I was very much knowing the vast majority of the horses very, very well. And
You were
I
locked
tried.
in. You were locked in.
Yeah, and it was easier to be locked in with a smaller circuit, smaller horse inventory, all that stuff. Same types of silks and owners, and not as much claiming activity. Try to be locked in here as well, but it really actually did help me memorize the horses, talking about them before the race, because you're just reminded of what you looked at in your homework, looking at the form beforehand.
Right.
So you can actually make, for example, being able to talk about horses, you can turn it into a positive rather than, oh, it's cutting into my time if you do it the right way. That's how I look at it.
Right. Okay. Well, so you got your start at Emerald Downs, then moved to Golden Gate, and now you're at Oaklawn and Monmouth. So that's literally coast to coast.
Yeah.
What is something that you might miss from Emerald Downs or Golden Gate?
Well, I say it a lot. I miss the people because when you go to these different places, you meet people, and when you're there long enough, you make friends and
Right.
you make connections. Obviously, each track has its own beauty. It's got its own characters. It's got
Right.
its own stories. But you really make great relationships. One great thing about the racing industry is that when you go to different places, you don't feel like a new kid on the block very long because you're taken in as part of the family, so to speak. And I miss the people that I got to know there. And that's not to say that I mean, I love being at Oaklawn and
Sure,
Monmouth, and I
sure,
made
sure. But I
friends
mean,
there, of
still,
course. But
yeah.
you do think about those people, you think about the people that you spend a lot of time with over the years.
Yeah, and that's great. That went right into my next question is
Okay.
you get the Oakland job. I'm going to assume that you had limited or no trips or experience in Oakland in Arkansas before. What you're moving to Arkansas for the first time? What is something that you thought that you were going to experience, and then it was maybe total opposite of what is real, or it could be the other way. You thought something was going to happen, but it wasn't like that.
Well, I know we're in a small town, Hot Springs, but it
Mhm.
doesn't feel that small. And I just sort of, I'd never been to Arkansas before. Never even, I don't think I've been on the phone with somebody who was in the state of Arkansas. Like I just said, Arkansas was like going to Mars. It was,
Right, right,
I would have no idea about anything other than Little Rock, and
sure,
that's about it. I figured you'd come here and there'd be nobody on the roads. That each house would be 1 mile apart from each other or whatever. That's sort of what I was envisioning, this super small town. And that's not the case in Hot Springs, and everybody's pretty close together, and there's a lot of activity. And I know decades ago it was a smaller town, so to
right.
speak, than it is now. But just being able to come here and to see the difference, it sort of makes me laugh, really.
Yeah,
Not, it
that's what
wasn't really a serious
I
thought,
was wanting to know because I figured you hadn't been to Arkansas, and I was like, I wonder what he thought about Arkansas. Then what he experienced once he got here and how different it actually was. Well, that could be good or bad, but yeah, that's something there that I was going to ask. New season starting in 3 days, less than 3 days now. What are you most excited about with this new season? I see now that they have some new wagers. I know that there's a full barns over there, a lot of horses. New jockeys going to be riding here. Rosario and Sayas, last I've heard, were going to be riding here all the time. What's your take?
Well, there's a lot of new things, along as you mentioned, with new jockeys, more horses, a couple new barns. We've got new wagers, of course, that $5 minimum late double. They just announced it today, the day of this recording, a $3 get out pick three. Of course, we have rolling doubles and pick threes that are not they're not that minimum. They're a lower minimum for the
Right.
rolling ones, but we've got those specialized wagers at the end of each card. The Class Six is back, so a pick six bet the last six races of the day, which should be a lot of fun. And the pick three and the double, the new wagers, they're a lower takeout of 15%. And I saw it with the Golden Hour double and the Golden Hour pick four, which combined Santa Anita and Golden Gate races. When I was at Golden Gate, higher minimum, lower takeout equals a lot higher payout. So even though maybe you have to narrow things down, you maybe can't spread as much depending on your budget. I do believe that if you win, you're going to be paid handsomely and you're going to really like that payout. I'm really looking forward to big fields. I guess would be the right way to put it. I love calling big fields. I love the competitiveness of Oaklawn, how it's really a hub. There's horses from all different places coming here for the winter and they're running against each other, and it's just a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to calling those big fields and, of course, seeing the stakes races. And I've always been a big fan of 2-year-old races and 3-year-old races in the early part of the year. No matter where I am, I just enjoy watching new horses that are younger showing up and looking for horses with potential. And you can't forget, of course, the 3-year-old division in 2026 with our very lucrative purses. It's going to attract some good quality, and that's always very exciting.
Yeah, let me see if you agree with me on this. I've made picks here at Oaklawn. I first went to Oaklawn with my dad back in 1982 when I was 13. I think you had to be 16 to get in, but I kept asking my dad about it, and he was just like, "Just act like you belong there; it'll be all right." And we rolled in, and started going regularly back when I was about 15 in '84. But so I've been making picks there a long time. The the early part of the Oaklawn meet is the most difficult to handicap of anything I do all year long. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. And the reason I think that is because the angles, there's more angles than even in the middle of the year. You got some trainers that have their horses really ready to run well fresh and ready to fire. You get guys that are getting horses off of layoffs and maybe they're not ready. You've got
Mhm.
certain horses you don't know if they take to the track. They might like a certain track, whether it be Oaklawn or somewhere else where their form either goes south or north depending on what track they like. You've got new jockeys that maybe are trying to figure out the track they're riding maybe differently, whether it be good or bad. Some may have an advantage. There's a lot of angles. Even looking at, for example, we know Kentucky horses typically have the strongest form in terms of who they're running against, typically the toughest races. But sometimes when you see a big class dropper, because here at Oaklawn as well, the money's good, so you can be very aggressive with your spotting. Some horses drop significantly with the trainers knowing their form's not going in the right direction. Other people are dropping to try to get a win. And sometimes you see horses with better form from maybe smaller tracks beat the horses that are coming from tougher tracks that don't have as good form. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's
It's
just way too many angles.
it's a lot. It is a lot. Everything seems like horses from all over the country are come together here at Oaklawn, and it's just a big melting pot. And you got to try to figure out what's going on early in the meet. And it's always I say every year, okay, next year I'm gonna do better early in the meet. Next year I'm gonna do better, and it's the same. It's just difficult. Okay, here we go. We're gonna start kind of wrap this up a little bit. I've kept you long enough. Some rapid fire questions here for you.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Favorite baseball team?
Red Sox, Boston Red
Red
Sox.
Sox. Wow. There's a bet I would have lost. I would have thought it was the Dodgers.
My
Dodgers,
family,
Angels, Padres. I would have. I never would have guessed Red Sox.
but both my parents are from Massachusetts. My dad's
Okay.
from Fall River and my mom's from Watertown. So basically, Patriots and Red Sox and even Boston Bruins when hockey season's around. I'm basically born into Massachusetts, Rhode
Got
Island
you.
type.
Got you.
Yeah.
Uh, favorite food?
It's gotta be pizza, a good pizza. My mom, her maiden name is Brandolino, very Italian. So anything Italian, we like it. I actually just had eggplant parmesan with some friends here about an hour ago for dinner. So there you go. And pizza, a good pizza, hard to beat for me.
Pizza is at the top of my list as well. Favorite movie?
Ooh, that's a very tough one. I would say
If you
my
got more than one, that's fine.
Well, I do like The Hangover, the first one, just because I like a good comedy. And I've watched that a few times. And usually, when I watch comedies enough, I don't laugh after about the third time. And after the third time, I'm still laughing.
Still,
So
so you
it's
know that moves on up the list.
it's got to be up. It's got to be up there. I also like scary movies. So, believe it or not, not every type of scary movie, but I would say that the Conjuring series is something that I very much got into with my scary movie genes.
Okay, here's one for you.
Okay.
See it back here.
Okay.
See it here from my daughter. The
Oh,
ducks.
there you go.
Where did your ducks? How did that start? How many are you up to now? Are they all up there with you in the booth now, or
Yeah, they're all here in Arkansas. We got about 300 of rubber ducks. And for those who don't know how this all started, we'll make a long story short. When I was in Emerald Downs in Washington, I would go bowling with some friends, and I went to get a ride from a friend of mine because something was going on with my car. So I got a ride and he had ducks on his dashboard. He didn't have a Jeep coincidentally, but I said, "Where'd you get those ducks?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I got them at the bowling alley we're going to." And there was a machine where you have to claw and you pick out a
hmm,
duck, you put in a dollar, and you could have 10 chances. I mean, as long as you got one, you kept going until you got one. So you're always guaranteed one. Then I had about 20 of them. And what happened was I didn't know what to do with them. They were all sitting in my apartment. So I put them in the announcer's booth, took a picture on social media, and I said, "Look what I just brought into my announcer's booth to spice things up." And next thing you know, folks from all over the country started sending me ducks and around the world. So I've gotten ducks from not just in the United States, but France, Ireland, Spain. It's been pretty cool and really quite flattering and really neat to see so many people follow the racing here in America and also follow my race calls as well.
yeah, that's good. I know it was like 15 minutes before I told my youngest the other day. I said, "Hey, you got a bunch of those ducks back there, don't you?" She's like, "Yes, I'm gonna need some the other day when I talked to Matt." She said, "What?"
There
I
you
said, "No,
go.
he's got a bunch of ducks too." So I had to go back there and get her. She gave me her best one. She really
Very good.
the,
Those are two good ones
the
to have.
Batman and Robin. She was all about that one. Okay,
Beautiful.
last couple things here.
All right.
Favorite race that you've called, and maybe the race you've called that meant the most to you.
Okay, well, I'll start with my favorite race I've ever called. It had to be journalism Haskell this year. Journalism, I mean,
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
the way he won, it was just a very dramatic
Hmm.
race. And the biggest stage, right? Haskell Day's a huge day. They have
Yeah.
great races that day and a great card, but also the Haskell itself is a very, very important race. There were tons of people. The track was packed. A lot of young people. I think a lot of these young people didn't know how to read a form, but they were betting the favorite. So here he comes, and there. I've never called a race that was that loud in my entire life. It was just amazingly, insanely loud. And when he hit the wire, it was like a movie. Like Seabiscuit had just beat War Admiral in that movie. It was like there were people throwing beer and water up in the air and hats, and everybody was cheering for journalism. It was an amazing race to call. So it's fairly fresh in my mind still,
Right.
but after 10 years of calling races, I would say that's my favorite race I've ever called. In terms of one that means the most, I would probably that's a tough one. It's hard to give one, but I would say
Right.
the first Long Acres Mile I ever called was pretty darn special. My first graded stakes race. The Long Acres Mile is a huge, huge race in the state of Washington, the Pacific Northwest. It's very prestigious if you can win it. And the big fan favorite, Striker PhD, won that year. There was a very large crowd. A lot of people were rooting for him. He made this big last to first bid, sort of like Zenyatta. So that was pretty meaningful to me and really tickled me to be able to call a race of that magnitude at such a young age. And I remember just calling that race and being like, wow, I feel
Right.
like I just called the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
It was
Right.
special for me.
Okay. One last thing before I let you go. I know you got probably other stuff to do this evening. A little birdie told me that you may or may not be writing a book. Is this true?
Yeah, so I'm working on a memoir. It's not nearly ready yet.
Okay.
It's going to take a little time, and I'm patient with it. I'm not rushing it. There's no deadline. It could be one of these things where I'm in the process of writing it, and I decide it's not time to put it out yet.
Yeah,
Maybe I, you know,
it's in process.
it exactly, and I'm not putting a time stamp on when it'll be out. I mean, I could wait 20 years. I just
Right,
don't.
right.
It's been a fun project. I've always really enjoyed writing. I guess telling stories in races, it makes sense that I would be able to write and tell stories there as well. It has not been an easy process. It's been quite the challenge, but I've enjoyed it. But there are a lot of interesting things that have happened in my life already, even at 33, and I would love to be able to share a story. And I think there's a story to be told there, and many lessons to be learned as well, or things to think about for other people as well. So I'm very excited about that. Again, not sure when it'll come out, but I'm hoping that at some point it will. And I've been working on it little by little. Good news though, I don't have any, deadline to have to put it out.
Right.
There have been times where I've taken a month or two off from it completely just because I have to think about what else. And when something pops up, then I go back to writing it.
There you
So,
go. You add in a new chapter.
right. So I'm excited about this, and it's been a fun project to work on, but we got a ways to go.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to wrap this up, Matt. That's all the questions I have for you. I
Thank
think
you.
we covered a lot of ground here. Thank you so much for taking some time out this evening to do this with me. I look forward to. I might bump into you over there Friday. I'm going to be over there Friday, taking the day off
Wonderful.
my regular job. So
Good call. Good call.
opening day is like this is worth a vacation day every year for me. So
There you go.
I look forward to seeing you at Oaklawn this year. And I'm going to wrap this up real quick from Matt Dinerman to me, Lang Whitman, and everybody at the Winner's Circle Fans of Oaklawn page. Until next time, may all your photo finishes end up in the winner's circle.